Laugh at my parents, they do not get technology. My dad spent 3 hours the other day trying to call me using a TV remote. Mom didn't notice, she was too busy watching her favorite program on the toaster.
Car repairs. Yeah, those are two words that are the nightmare of road comedians. When I was working comedy clubs hard, I was driving like 50,000 miles a year. And the joke was that most of your money from comedy went into car repairs. I had a Plymouth Laser, which was kind of a new car at the time, and it broke down all over the country. One particularly bad week, I was working at Joker's in Dayton, Ohio, with the very funny Rodney Carrington. And of course, my car broke down. He had to give me a ride to the club every single night. Now, Rodney was really gracious about it, but it was really, really frustrating. The shows went great, though, and Rodney and I really hit it off. I had a few days off after the week was over, so Rodney set me up with an audition at the St. Louis Funny Bone. Of course, I had to leave my car in Dayton and rent one to get to the audition. Then I had to drive to Virginia the next day to do a show. Yeah, and then drive back to Dayton to get my car. Talk about crisscrossing the country. I was so stressed out about it when I got to the audition that I didn't do very well. I remember the manager being really nice and asking me, "How long have you done this comedy thing?" Yeah, that is not a good question to comedians. I said, about 2 full years. She said, "Well, that really isn't a lot of time. Maybe you should come back in a couple years." Yeah, I was really bummed. I headed out that night to do part of the drive to Virginia, and I ended up sleeping in my car in a rest area. I woke up to the cleaning woman standing next to my car saying, "Good morning." My first thought was, I bet my friends who have office jobs have never woken up to this. I got to my Virginia gig, which was at my alma mater, Virginia Tech, did the gig, and then drove back to Ohio the next day to get my car. The mechanic had replaced a head gasket. Yeah, that's huge. I picked up the car and headed back to Virginia, and it wasn't completely fixed. Yeah, I still had a little issue that it would turn off and stay off for like 30 minutes. I was hoping not to stay in Ohio that night, so I just kept driving. At one point, it just cut off completely, and I had to get it over to the side of the road. I was kind of hoping it was just a dead battery, so I stood on the side of the road with jumper cables at dusk, flagging people down. A really nice family pulled up in a car that looked about 100 times worse than mine. Yeah, they got out and they jumped the car, and no luck, it wasn't the battery. The woman just felt awful that she couldn't help me. She said, "Please remember that we're nice people here in Ohio." And yes, they are. Then a few minutes later, a 20-something-year-old guy stopped, and he tried to jump it too. No luck. Yeah, as he left, he said, "Hey, just remember, us younger generation wants to help." He was so nice. There were no cell phones back then, so I sat for another hour or so and finally got the car cranked up. I drove it as far as I could until about 11 o'clock at night when I needed gas. Yeah, I pulled into a gas station, parked at the pump with the car facing a parking spot in front of the store. I figured if it didn't start, I could just push it into a parking space. Before turning it off, I went to a payphone and called my sister, Debbie. I asked her if I really needed to turn the car off to put gas in. I think that freaked her out a little bit. She and her husband, Tad, convinced me to turn it off. Miraculously, after gassing up, it started again, and I headed out. I had to drive on the New Jersey Turnpike, which in my opinion is the scariest road in the country. It's very windy, and there's no lights and no shoulder to get over on, if, you're driving a crappy car. I made it home and got the car to my mechanic the next day, but the whole drive was a nail-biter. The takeaway tip from this is, aside from you should always help people if you can, and Ohio is nice, is whatever you're working on, make sure you have the right tools for the job, even if it costs you more money in the beginning. In my case, I had an unreliable car that broke down all over the country because I didn't put money into a good car in the first place. My car was sort of a sporty car, wasn't really built to be driving the way I was driving it. I should have invested in something a little more roadworthy. As a result, I spent a lot of time and money with car mechanics. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Feel free to check out my website, theworklady.com. This is Jan. Take care and enjoy your journey.